Happy Friday, everyone. I know it's probably Thursday if you are listening on the day this comes out, but it's Friday for us, and I'm very excited. Welcome back to another episode of Energy 101. We actually have two special guests today, sort of. Before we jump into who our guest is today, we have a new DW Energy 101 member coming in, Crystal. She joined our team in February. Do you just want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah.
Great.
I'm Crystal. I'm the customer experience coordinator, so I work very closely with Sydney and Matt and Jake in sales and that stuff. But I'm super excited. Very nervous.
And no, don't be nervous. And we love her. She's been the best addition. She's crushing it.
Yep. I love it here. I'm having so much fun.
Yay. And Julie's here too, per usual.
Yeah.
And the guest of honor, Lisa Hough.
Hello, hello.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
So today we are going to dive a little bit more into Bitcoin. For those of you that listened to our episode with Justin, I'm actually excited we did that first because I didn't know anything about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining before that episode. I think what we talked about is I could read a lot of the words, but I still didn't fully understand what they meant. So he came on and did a great job of dumbing it down for us. So now I'm now when we talk about it, I actually can,
put things together.
Yeah. I think that was one of the episodes Crystal listened to.
Yeah.
Before she came on board too.
Yeah. And it was really important, right before Empower, because I came on right when we were in the thick of it. And I had no idea what Bitcoin was, what the relation to energy was. So I listened to that and I was like, okay.
Now I get it.
I think I'm good.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One little nugget.
Yeah.
Pull you in.
Yeah.
Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you're sucked in.
You're sucked in. Can't get out.
So let's dive into your background before we kind of get into the thick of it.
Yeah. So I've had a couple of careers before being a Bitcoin zealot. But the one that I guess I'm probably most proud of is I was in the energy business for a very long time. Graduated from college, and my very first job was working for Solomon Brothers. They had a trading desk in Houston called Fibro Energy. And it's a very long time ago. Y'all were even born. And I took that job. It was really a fluke. So I graduated from SMU. I had a science degree. I think I had a minor in math. I honestly don't remember. And I was having a really hard time getting the job that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So the job that I wanted, I thought I'd be perfect for pharmaceutical sales. And I kept interviewing for jobs and not getting the job.
That surprised me. I feel like I can see you as a sales recruiter out there. Just
I know. I was going to get really excited about, I don't know, selling something, heart medication.
Who knows? Anything.
Who knows? But so this was back in the time when you would submit your resume and a cover letter. It was back when you wrote cover letters for jobs. You'd mail them in. And so I was reading the Houston Chronicle. Oh, look, there's an ad for an analyst. I have no idea what this is. I'm going to send in my cover letter and my resume. Well, they brought me in for an interview. Turns out they had 400 applicants and they hired 2 people. I got the job. Wow. And a gentleman named Toby Sands was the other individual who got the job. He is from Norway. And I'm sure that he did all of the work in the first 6 months because I had no idea what I was doing. In fact, the night before I started, my brother-in-law, David, said, "So are you working on their commodities desk or their equities desk?" And I was like, "I'll let you know tomorrow because I don't even know what either of those is."
I was about to say, what is that? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was on their commodities desk, obviously. So Fibro, it was all commodities, which, oil, heavy fuels, natural gas, petrochemicals, et cetera. And I really figured out in the first few months that, so by the way, this was y'all's office is amazing. I love it. I say it every time I come in here. It has the best vibe. And Fibro office, super cool. It was downtown. Nice. And it was this huge football field floor, completely open. And it was just rows of desks. So there would be 20 rows of, with 10 desks kind of down the way. So everybody had multiple screens and multiple phones, and everybody had the same chair. Everybody had one of those Herman Miller chairs. And it really became super clear that the guy sitting next to me was probably making 4 or 5 times as much, or 10 times as much money, 20 times as much money as I was making. And he really wasn't any smarter than I was. I mean, I was convinced, like, it's not like I'm super smart. I mean, I think I am smart, but it's not like I'm some rocket scientist.
Right.
And he was no rocket scientist, and he's making all this money. And by the way, his hours were a lot shorter, and he looked like he was having more fun than I was, doing the P&L. So that was my goal. I set my goal in becoming a trader, and that's what I did. So I've had some great roles. Last role I had that I was really proud of. I mean, I was proud of all of them, but I worked at PG&E Energy, and I ran the East Coast trading. So we had a lot of physical assets. We had like 3 trillion cubic feet of storage in the Gulf Coast. We had pipeline capacity. We had several thousand megawatts. And I was on our hedge team for our energy, all of our energy assets, but our power generation specifically, because the market that I specialized in was our Northeast gas market. There were really complicated, really small pipelines that were always constrained and always had problems. So if you owned assets where those pipelines were located, you had the most flexibility, and you really had a responsibility of being a market maker, because there were a lot of people that would trade those pipelines either just speculatively, or maybe they also had generation, supply needs up there. But learning how to arbitrage between the assets, and then also managing a speculative financial book was just a whole lot of fun.
I didn't know that about you.
There you go.
I mean, I figured you'd come from energy, but I feel like when we met, you were already in the Bitcoin space. So
yeah, I didn't know. I know. Well, there's this huge connection between Bitcoin and energy, and I think a lot of people, me included, when you first get into Bitcoin, you're listening to the macro narrative. So you're listening to the Fed is raising rates, and we're printing money and inflation. You're hearing all of these cues, but you don't understand that Bitcoin really isn't driven by that. I was about to say Bitcoin doesn't care. It doesn't care. It doesn't need the Fed. It will exist, inside the system, outside the system, however you want to think about it. It's its own deal. It's like its own little planetary something. So anyway, most people don't understand the connection between Bitcoin and energy. And I'm not, and I didn't when I first came into it. And maybe I didn't really fully grasp it until I started really participating here locally in Houston at some of y'all's events, and certainly working with Parker Lewis at Unchained Capital. I would say that Parker was absolute visionary in making the correlation between Bitcoin and energy and helping people grasp that.
Yeah.
So, but once you've sort of got it, it makes you dig in even deeper, right? Because like y'all are in Houston, y'all have, loads of contacts that are in the energy business. And this is kind of the meat of your business and your ecosystem. And when you understand that there's this huge connection to Bitcoin, it's like, wow, okay, I live in the heartbeat of America. Everything that we need basically is either delivered on the ship channel or refined on the Gulf Coast. I mean, that's the engine that keeps us running. And now we've got Bitcoin that's part of that.
So let's dive into what is the connection between Bitcoin and energy.
Yeah, so the connection between Bitcoin and energy is that, the narrative out there is that Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. Right. And factually, it uses less than 0.1% of the energy that is produced. So
this is worldwide.
Worldwide. Yeah. There's more energy wasted than is consumed by the entire Bitcoin network. But still, it uses energy. And the true innovation of this ecosystem, and a lot of people say, I'm not interested in Bitcoin, but I'm interested in blockchain. Which is a little like saying, I'm interested in the copper wire, not the electricity. But I would offer to you that, yes, blockchain is part of the innovation, but it is the proof of work. It is blockchain and proof of work. So blockchain with the brute force energy, right? You have to have an input in order to produce a product.
Right.
no different than manufacturing any other product. If I were to manufacture, going back to pharmaceuticals, if I were to manufacture a pharmaceutical, you would want me to use real ingredients. You wouldn't want me to be, concocting stuff out of thin air and just going, well, just pretend this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And essentially that's what a proof of stake network is. There's no computational effort. There's no hard ingredient that goes into making that product. So all value of Bitcoin is derived from the fact that there only ever will be 21 million.
Right.
And that is in part due to, is due to the mathematical code, what's in the code, but that it takes energy to make that a reality.
Yeah. I will say back in 2016, 2017, I was one of those people saying blockchain, not Bitcoin. I worked for a couple of ICOs, they were building their technologies, which is really cool to be a part of. That's a really interesting part of my life that I'm I look back and I'm what was I doing?
But tell people what that is.
So an ICO is initial coin offering. So back in 2017, there was this huge bubble in the crypto space. And what was happening were these new technologies were being developed, and they would do what was called an ICO. So they would get loads and loads of money, investors.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were basically investing in the coin and then building out the technology later. But a lot of that technology was never built. So you built it out thinking one day it could be utilized.
Right.
So half of it was people actually believed in the technology. Other half of it, people just wanted to make money.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I'm explaining this.
That's exactly right. And actually, statistically, it's the number I've heard is 78% of all ICOs that were ever brought to market came to market without a digit of code.
It was wild. I'm not kidding you. Being in that space was wild. How much money these companies were getting and having zero product or either even close to a product. You're at an idea.
And they were still getting all this money.
Millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and then people would just lose it all. So they would have drops where you would get dropped the coin if you, I don't know, join their ICO group or whatever. But half it so you could have all these coins that were gonna be worth something one day, but that never came to fruition. The ones that I worked on, I don't think are a thing anymore. Really cool ideas. One of them was called ShipChain, and it was logistics, shipping and logistics on the blockchain, and really knowing from where it starts and seeing the transactions on the blockchain, seeing that throughout its life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a cool technology, but never made it.
Yeah, people often refer to technology around blockchain, and they think, oh, it's really going to be transformational in the supply chain realm. And IBM, I think, spent $200 million, quite a bit of money working on that. And it's my understanding that it might still be in existence, but they've pretty much abandoned that. They've determined that it's not going to work.
Yeah.
The same thing with the Australian Stock Exchange, spent not an insignificant amount of money thinking that they would put their trading on the blockchain. And that's my understanding that they've abandoned that also. So, I mean, is blockchain useful? Yes. I would say, though, that anything that is not built with proof of work is no different than a ledger, an Excel spreadsheet that people can easily change.
Right.
Yeah. So most of it was proof of stake because it was all built on Ethereum, which, isn't as...
Which is
Bitcoin's
garbage.
the only thing that's proof of work. Yeah.
Ethereum is garbage. And it will fail. And I will not say I told you so, but I will be happy. I will be happy for the average investor when it becomes clear that there only ever can be one winner in this space.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. How did you get into the space?
Okay.
Is this a good one?
Well, people laugh when I tell the story, but it's a true story. So I had been living on this tiny little island in the East Coast, and it was fantastic.
That sounds lovely.
It was.
I would like to do that.
It was like 7 square miles, and we had 2 state parks, 9 working farms. It was incredible. But I decided to move back to Houston. So I grew up here and, obviously worked in the energy business. I was largely here, although when I was at PG&E, I was in Washington, D.C. So anyway, I decided, okay, I need to get a job. I'm going to go back to Houston, and I'm going to go back to the energy business. So I moved back to Houston and didn't really start a job search. I was trading my own portfolio and really studying technology stocks, which I can tell you how I launched into. I can continue the story in that. But so I come back and I start dating, and I dated a guy for a little while, super nice man. He has his own oil and gas production company, family company, and he was a consultant, I think at McKinsey, for a long time. And he looked at me one night at dinner and said, I think that you should start consulting practice teaching people about Bitcoin so that you can talk to them about Bitcoin during the day and we can talk about something else at night. Right. And I thought, that is a brilliant idea. That is what I will do. So I spun up a deck and started telling people that actually I printed up cards that say, I like to talk about Bitcoin. And I started telling people that I was, I'm not sure I used the word expert, but I told people I knew a lot about Bitcoin and I could help them understand it.
What year was this in?
This is like beginning of 21.
Okay.
Yeah. This is because I started learning about Bitcoin in late 2018, 2019.
Okay.
Started investing a little bit, like I bought like $100 or something.
Right.
So I print up this deck, and this gentleman introduces me to several of his friends, and I start reaching out to my friends and saying, hey, I think I'm going to try to get a consulting business off the ground. And all my friends were super supportive, said, okay, come talk to me. Let's go talk to my wealth manager.
Mm-hmm.
Those wealth managers introduced me to other wealth managers. So my strategy for getting the business off the ground was, okay, how am I going to get people to hire me? Well, I'll give you a tip. If anybody wants to start a consulting practice, first of all, you have to do good work, but give away your service. Mm-hmm. Probably the first 10 clients that I had, I said, if you will write me, I will do this for free. But if you find what I give you valuable, if you'll please write me a testimonial, please write a reference for me that I can use on my website. And that is how I had my first, 5 or 10, whatever, great testimonials. And then those people also referred me to other people.
Right.
So anyway, I go to attend the Texas Blockchain Council thing in Austin. And I'm standing at the very end of the conference. I'm the last person to walk out of the conference room. I guess I'd been checking my computer or something, catching up on email. And as I'm walking through the hallway in this AT&T conference center in Austin, Parker Lewis is over on the other side of the hallway, and he's talking to somebody. And he kind of looks across the way and goes, hey, that's a great jacket. So I had on a flight jacket that had a big American flag patch. So anyway, I walked over and introduced myself to him. And what was great was that he introduced himself to me. He put his hand out and said, I'm Parker Lewis. I'm like, I know who you are. I've watched you. I've read everything you've written. I've watched you on all this stuff. But it was really sweet. Actually, a long time ago, I met Jacqueline Onassis. And same thing. When I met her, she introduced herself.
Oh,
I thought it was
that's
incredible.
awesome.
So, yeah. And by the way, I'm a first name, last name introducer.
Mhm.
So it really bothers me when people don't say their last name when, I don't know. It's like, you have parents or you have a last name, you should use it. Unless I guess you're in the Bitcoin space and then you don't want to give your first name or your last name.
Anything at all.
Yeah, it's too late for that. So anyway, that's how I basically went to work for Unchained. Parker invited me to come talk to them. And from, once I got there, it was like, if you're working at Unchained, you're on the mothership of Bitcoin. And just being able to work in that group and learn from all of those people was an incredible experience.
How long were you there?
I was there just under a year.
Okay. And what did you do while you worked for them?
Client services in Houston.
Okay.
So I worked with Mario Gutierrez.
Wow.
Mario.
Yes.
Everyone does.
He's the best.
He is the hardest working man in show business.
And he's so, like you, is so good to us as a company and so helpful in just spreading the message about the community and empower and our influence. And
I love our
anything
our
we-
Bitcoin.
Yeah. Our Bitcoin bros.
Our Bitcoin bros and Lisa.
And Lisa.
I could be a bro.
You got
Yeah.
totally all good.
You're included.
You are.
So he and I both have energy backgrounds. So Mario was a geologist, or he has a geology degree, but it's more than that. Like
He's like
he
a
has-
geophysicist or something.
exactly. Like
yeah.
he's like 2 graduate degrees. It's like
Yeah.
anyway, was at Exxon and just has incredible technical knowledge of the space. And he and I would go around to investment banks or private equity firms, energy companies, family offices, and kind of give our spiel on, either what the hell is Bitcoin or what is Bitcoin mining, and just help people touch that space, right? Unchained is not a salesy place, right? They are. I always say that my strategy for business development lies within one key metric, which is to be of service. And that's very closely aligned with Unchained. They just want to be of service. They're not there to sell you something. Yes, they offer the ability to buy Bitcoin and they'll help you figure out how to hold your own private keys, but to be of service. So Mario and I were out in the community actively, trying to spread the message of Bitcoin.
Yeah. I love that.
How did the energy companies respond to you? Like, were most of them like not willing to learn?
So it's been an interesting journey with the energy companies. And so when I had my consulting practice before Unchained, I started talking to several of the energy companies. And they have gone from, oh, no, my shareholders would kill me, or, that is not within our mission, to, hey, can you come back in and talk to us again? Can you meet with so-and-so on this team? And we're going to form a team on let's explore Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you really why it matters. So this is what I'm most interested about in Bitcoin right now, is because I believe that the next wave of adoption comes from the energy companies. And I'm just going to use examples. I'm not going to, these may or may not be people that I've spoken to directly, but I'm going to use company names to give you a visual. If you are Calpine, so the 3rd largest energy producer, power producer in the country, in Texas, a non-zero % of the time, they pay ERCOT to take excess power. Now, I've heard loosely that it's around 4%. So 4% of the time, you have an energy company paying someone else
To take their excess.
to take a product that they just made. Like, in what world is that realistic?
Yeah.
Right? Not realistic. So they have an interest and a duty, in my view, to their shareholders okay, Bitcoin mining exists. Maybe it didn't exist 5 years ago.
Right.
You didn't understand it, but you do now. You've seen it, right? The veil's off. I believe that all energy companies will start to use Bitcoin mining as, a way to fine tune their revenue initially. But, my belief is the price of Bitcoin grows, even if they allocate, tiny bit of resources to it, if they hold that on their balance sheet, and maybe they will or maybe they won't. If they do, it will become a large part of their corporate directive.
I was about to ask if normally do they hold it or do they think because there are some Bitcoin mining companies who they can sell their excess energy to, correct? So they're getting paid then in USD rather than holding it and not knowing. What are you seeing? What do most of them do?
The energy companies?
Yes.
I'm not aware that any energy companies are holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And if they were a public company, they'd have to disclose it. And if they disclosed it, the whole market would know. I'm not aware that anyone is currently. They will be.
Yeah.
I
am so ready for the first one. I just want to see the price.
Mm-hmm.
I just am so curious who will be the first mover.
And I can't remember if it was your conference. Was Shell a sponsor of Empower?
No, Shell
Okay.
is
Sponsor us, please.
well, they're sponsoring Bitcoin 2023, 2024, 2025, but we can't talk to them. So we haven't been in contact with them at all. We're in their own backyard. We're in the hub. Shell.
Literally.
Shell. Calling you out. But yeah, no, that really bothers me that they're going to Bitcoin, which is great. Do that, but also support your community here.
Especially
we're the hub of Bitcoin mining.
Yes, your target, what you specifically do in your company and how you can help the industry is us. It's not Bitcoin 2023, whatever. It's Empower. It's focused on mining. We had a sponsor, Moonshot Pods. It's their first time in Empower. They had a great time and they were going to Bitcoin 2023. And I just remember them being a little, not nervous, but they're just yeah, we're going to see how it goes. It's really expensive. And I'm just kind of, worried that it's a lot of people who are just really into Bitcoin and not necessarily on the energy side. He was it was really nice being here because all of these people here are focused on the mining energy sector, so they could actually work with us and use our product and things like that. So,
right. So for folks that don't know, the reason why Shell, so they were a sponsor of the Bitcoin conference.
Yeah.
They make a fluid that is used in immersion mining.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the connection for anybody that's not familiar. Shell, paging Shell. Please call Digital Wildcat.
We will love that. No, but yeah. So I think a lot of what's really interesting to me, and I'm glad you brought that up, is a lot of these energy companies are producing things that can be used in Bitcoin mining or things like that fluid in the immersion
cooling, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like baby oil. It's like a baby oil fluid, so it helps you mitigate heat. Basically, Bitcoin mining machine, for people that aren't familiar, it looks like a shoebox, although larger than probably our shoeboxes. They have fans on the end of them. So to immerse this in a liquid, you take the fan off, certainly, and I'm not sure what other things that you have to do, but basically you dunk this in this baby oil-like fluid, and it helps you mitigate the heat.
Which in turn makes it more efficient.
It does.
It costs for energy.
Yeah, so I don't know if it changes the energy cost, but it definitely, I think you can overclock, so it gives you more efficiency. And I've heard people say that it also extends the life of your machine.
That makes sense.
Good. So paging Shell, please call Digital Wildcatters. You need to be more involved in the Houston Bitcoin mining community because Houston is the Bitcoin mining capital of the world.
Yes.
That's what Parker Lewis says, so it must be true.
Yep. We'll take it.
Absolutely.
So so Calpine, right? So a non-0% of the time they pay ERCOT. I'm going to give you another example. I recently met with a company that is one of the largest E&P companies out in the Gulf, right? So they've got rigs in the Gulf. So the oil goes into a pipeline and comes back to shore, but they use gas on that rig to fire the rig, right? They cook and they run their computers and they did all of this activity. They still flare gas, right? So, all right, let me get this straight. So you fly people on helicopters out to a rig, you pay them, you haul all of this equipment out there, you go down hundreds of feet to secure this rig to the ocean floor, or however they do it. My point is, you've spent a ton of money to build this out, and you're literally lighting something that you brought out of the ground on fire. Like, to me, it's a little bit of a baking soda moment, right? Like, let me go to the store and buy this little box, and I'm going to come home, rip it open, and dump it down the drain.
Yeah.
Like, God, whoever came up with the marketing of baking soda is a sheer genius, right? Because let me just tell you, ice accomplishes exactly the same thing. Cleans your drain, cleans your disposal thing, right? Yeah. Anyway, not like I'm Heloise the homemaker, but
No, I was told the same thing. I had somebody who came down to my house and worked on some of my plumbing, and he told me use ice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. How do you use? You just put it down there.
yeah, it cleans it. It like sharpens the blades, cleans it up.
You put your
Disposal on.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that too.
yeah,
So-
yeah. I mean, baking soda. Another helpful Heloise tip is, it's a fantastic exfoliant for your skin. You don't have to spend money on anything. You can just use baking soda.
I did not know that.
Yeah, my grandmother taught me that.
I love that. I'm gonna try that. We'll report back.
Okay, so these rigs are lighting stuff on fire because they have excess. That makes no sense. I mean, you have midstream companies, you've got gathering plants with excess heat that they could be using to power Bitcoin mining machines, are often referred to as rigs, but you could be mining Bitcoin with your excess heat. In fact, the other night I had dinner with a company on the East Coast who is doing some financial restructuring. They make ice, and they sell their waste heat or their byproduct to someone else so that they can make something. Okay, great. But I guess New York, parts of the country don't actively embrace Bitcoin mining. But if you are an industrial producer and you have waste heat, you should be considering mining Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You should at least run the numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
If you need help, call me and I'll tell you who to call.
Right.
I have maybe a stupid question.
There are no stupid questions.
Okay, so when oil and gas companies flare, it doesn't matter what they're flaring, like whatever gas that is. Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be used to power a Bitcoin miner.
Yeah, that's not a dumb question. That's a really good question. So I'm not a natural gas. I'm not a component expert, but yeah, natural gas typically has other gases that are in it, and so when it's shipped to a processing plant, it might extract the other liquids, right? So I don't know what they have out there specifically.
I've just always been curious of that because I know sometimes they flare for safety reasons, like if that's gases or whatever. Maybe it's not all gas, but maybe it's some kind of chemical or something that just
it's the natural gas liquids.
Yeah. So I was just curious if
if they're onshore, you would basically separate those because in a lot of cases those liquids are more valuable than the gas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this might be another question
that was a great question.
Thank you. Whenever and I know you're not an expert in mining, but I feel like you will know this answer. Do you if you were taking your flared gas and you're like, no, I want to use it for mining, does it then go to midstream like a pipeline and then go to the Bitcoin miner, or do you co-locate and it goes directly there? Like, how do they do that?
Yeah. Okay. That's a fantastic question. And this is the cool thing about mining Bitcoin is that you can scale it to the size of your supply. So let's just say that that I have gas coming out of the ground in a field, right? I own a property and I have a gas well.
Mm-hmm.
I can drop those Bitcoin mining computers in a shipping container. I mean, I could drop them like in a porta potty container, right? You can size those for the amount of gas that you have coming out. The gas comes out of the ground into essentially hose into a generator. Generator converts it to electricity. You plug your Bitcoin miners in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So Bitcoin mining, I mean, not to like diverge, but it's also making use of not only wasted energy, but wasted resources,
Right.
or like scrap things all over the world. So for example, I was out at a site recently with some Bitcoin miners, and they had purchased 40-year-old generators that were like going to go, I don't know, in generator graveland. And these guys were, fixing it up, refurbishing the generator so that they could mine Bitcoin. But people are scouting for these Bitcoin miners. Yes, you could go buy new generators,
Right.
but like they're keeping input costs low so that they can maximize the efficiency, the economic efficiency of their projects. So that's like the cool thing about a Bitcoin miner is that people are mining off of landfills, right? They're using the methane that comes out of a landfill to mine. They're mining off waterfalls. They're mining off geothermal.
I think my favorite use case, and I mean, obviously, flared gas is a great use case, but renewables don't have storage right now. So it's not easy to store wind power or solar power. But using that excess whenever no one else is using it, instead of it just going to waste, powering Bitcoin miner, like it's so cool. I don't know how people aren't bought in.
Why do you think companies are so like hesitant with doing it? Because when you break it down like that, it just makes so much sense. Like, why aren't people doing it?
Yeah, I don't think that they're against it. I mean, I'll just speak from my very own experience talking to, I'm not going to use their name, but 2+ years ago, talking to one of these companies and them looking at me straight in the eye and saying, I just cannot, like that, my shareholders, I cannot use the word Bitcoin. Right. To fast forward, I see them in February at an event, and this is not a Bitcoin company. They are attending a Bitcoin event, and they tap me on the shoulder and they go, guess what?
No.
Right. But it's just a learning curve.
Right.
Did you know that like this was happening until someone here just told you? Like CBS does not tell you this.
Yeah.
CNBC does not tell these stories, right? The mainstream, by the way, if you're still watching the news, like, please stop.
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
It is such a negative narrative to dismiss or discount Bitcoin mining. Not to like get off on another tangent, but in my view is that these energy companies need to be respected because we need onshore energy production for our national security. And if you don't understand that after watching the Russia-Ukraine situation and the threat that Europe felt, this past winter, potentially not having enough power, then I don't know. I mean, you got to realize that onshore production or U.S. production of energy assets is critical to not only our national economy, our U.S. economy, but is critical to our security.
Yeah.
And when people begin to understand that owning Bitcoin not only protects them personally, right? It is wealth that cannot be taken from you no matter what. Companies will also begin to understand that. Nation states now understand that, right? I mean, y'all know Milena Mayorga, who came and spoke at your fantastic Empower conference this year, and who I had a chance to interview on your podcast. Like El Salvador figured it out. I think it is absolutely detrimental to our nation that, and I believe that CNBC and Warren Buffett all play a part in, putting nails in the coffin of the strength of the U.S. economy. I mean, Warren Buffett actively, dismisses or insults Bitcoin because he's, Berkshire Hathaway Energy has announced 2 years ago that they're going to spend $10 billion to build 10 peaker plants in Texas. Well, let me just tell you that those 10 peaker plants, basically, he hatched a deal where they'll put the infrastructure in, right? They'll put the cost in, but they get a guaranteed rate of return of like 8 to 10%. But guess who really pays for those? I think we as individuals will see, I looked this up the other day, I think it's like $1.46 a month on our bill, all the way up to an industrial user of power will pay like $60 a month. Jeez. Like that is that is ridiculous. You don't need to do that. We in Texas don't need peaker plants. Right. Greg Abbott has come out and said we should refurbish, we should winterize our energy assets here in Texas. There is enough. The problem with the storm wasn't that there wasn't enough power. It was that nothing was winterized.
Right.
But we know that as society grows, our need for energy grows. That does not mean that the answer is a peaker plant. And I would offer that the answer is letting Bitcoin miners come in and do what they do best, which is, build out their own economy. They coordinate economic activity in order to make a product. And by doing so, they're, revitalizing small towns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm a Bitcoin miner and I have access to the grid and let's say I'm tapped into the grid, I'm Riot, right? In Rockdale. I have 500 megawatts. I'm tapped into ERCOT. They have developed that. That was not there before, right? It was an Alcoa plant, but it was not in a productive state to add to ERCOT. So now it's up, it's operational. I mean, they've negotiated long-term contracts with ERCOT, like some 5-year and some 10-year contracts with ERCOT, basically where they've locked in their power cost.
Right.
But they've also agreed that when ERCOT needs the power, they'll turn off. So them turning off and a peaker plant from Berkshire Hathaway turning on are essentially accomplishing the same thing, except for you and I are paying insurance for peaker plants that, by the way, the peaker plant gets paid, they get paid for not producing any energy. They get paid 365 days a year for not doing anything at all.
That seems like a scam.
Yeah.
It's a total scam. So Riot turning off and a peaker plant turning on accomplishes the same thing, right? Power on the grid.
Right.
So why not? I mean, we are America. I mean, this is like a communist solution to power.
It comes down to capitalism.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Crazy town. And that's why I get the nickname of like being a zealot, which I love.
I didn't know about that though. That's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll go read about it.
I do not like, I do not like, I used to read all of the investor reports from Berkshire Hathaway. He'd write a letter. I'd watch the conferences. Like I'd sit there all day on a Saturday and consume all that garbage. And now I'm like, he's fine looking after one thing, right? It's his entity.
Mm-hmm.
But I would offer that, Bitcoin miners are motivated by money and greed, as they should be, right? Every business should be motivated to produce something that's economically viable. But they're actually doing a service for, every person that owns Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? They're securing, helping. And what I mean by that is, so when those Bitcoin mining computers when they turn on and they run the protocol, every one of those that comes on the grid strengthens the system. And so if you think about that, like, let's think about like when telephones were first invented.
Mm-hmm.
The strength of the telephone network might have been Alexander Graham Bell and his friend who lived across town. There were 2 telephones, right? I would say to you, that's not a very strong network.
Right.
The telephone networks today are very strong.
Right.
And that's the same with Bitcoin mining. When it started, you could mine Bitcoin on your regular computer because it just didn't take very much power to do it. And there were 10 people, I think, the first month.
That makes sense.
But now there's loads of people all over the world that are mining Bitcoin. So every one of those that comes on, every one of those ASIC computers that comes on is securing the network.
Mm-hmm.
And by securing the network, you're securing the property that can be held by every human on Earth, regardless of property rights. Bitcoin is the only form of property that can be held by every human on Earth, regardless of property rights.
When we talked about that a lot on the last podcast with Justin at Empower about how it's giving, power back to the people, giving people in underprivileged economies the ability to make their own money and have a currency, that can't be taken by corrupt governments and doesn't matter based on your social stature or anything.
Does not. Well, and it I think I posted on LinkedIn today about this. So money, Bitcoin is money. It's all it is. It's money. And money is a representation of your energy, right? You guys all got up. You all drove to this phenomenally awesome office. You ate breakfast. You came to work. Presumably, I don't know when you get paid, once a month, twice a month, whatever. You're going to get paid, and you're going to get paid in dollars. And then it's your decision, how best do I preserve my energy that I've just been paid for in dollars? Do I buy Apple stock? Do I buy Bitcoin? Do I buy, I don't know, a Chanel bag, a Ferrari? Like, what do I buy with these dollars, right? Those are all choices where we're trying to figure out how to preserve our energy, right? Money is an expression of energy.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, me too.
Money and Bitcoin is a call option. So back to my trading days, it is a call option on any good or service that you may want in the future. So it is a choice that we all have in America, which is a choice that if you're not grateful for the choice to be able to figure out how to preserve your wealth, you're not waking up on the right side of the bed, because in many countries, they can't hold dollars. In some countries, they can't even hold their own currency, right? Like, they're not allowed to save.
That's insane.
That is
sad.
truth.
It is sad.
Yeah, it is truth. So, I believe that we all fell out of the lucky tree. We were all born in America. We get to live here. We get to work here.
Right.
I think working is, God-given privilege. I've worked since I was 14 years old. I love working. But if we're going to work, we got to preserve that in the best way we can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I see a big comparison to having access to cheap and reliable energy too. Like, that's a privilege of ours that a lot of people take for granted. And the same thing, like those same countries who can't have a savings account, they don't have access to energy.
Okay, so I really loved the Empower conference. I will say my favorite panel was the panel that I was on, not because I was on it, but because
The topic.
well, yeah. Gideon Powell, like, people need to look him up, and he's not the greatest tweeter of all time, but if you could ever hear him speak, or even better, if you could ever like be within 10 feet of the guy, I mean, he really talks about what you just said, like reliable access to energy. But energy poverty is a thing, right? And we don't feel it here because we wake up and we turn the switch and our lights come on,
Right.
but most of the world lives in an energy poverty situation. And so what is energy poverty? How is that actually defined? Energy poverty is officially defined as less than 4 hours access to energy a day.
Okay.
That's
Less than
insane.
4 hours
Think of
of access.
all the things, like a fridge that's on 24/7.
My computers. I've got computers that are on 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I went to Africa a few years ago, my daughter and I went and we volunteered at a school. It was and the kids all lived there. There was no power except for mealtime, dinner time, and even like their water heaters. So we lived with, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 little kids, and then they had 2 mamas that lived in the houses with these kids. We lived there, and the mamas would go haul wood by hand every day to like this huge steel drum that was next to their water heater, and they'd heat water so that everybody could like hop in a 2-minute hot shower.
Oh, wow.
Right. Like, again, I mean, I feel like a lot of our problem maybe in the US is that we're so US focused.
Yeah.
Which is okay. Like, we all focus on the things that we're around. But when you start to travel, and when you travel to places that are not developed, it gives you this sense of how integral energy is to our success and to our health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the narrative that we need to use less energy, I would offer that the ESG narrative has been absolutely dangerous to America. We don't need to use less energy. We need to use more energy. Energy leads to, obviously, human flourishing. It also leads to better education statistics and better health statistics. Energy is our heartbeat. It is the heartbeat of our country and of economic freedom. So anyway, I love the Empower Conference, but please go back, y'all that are watching, go back and pull up some of these panels, especially there were a couple that touched on more subjects like, energy poverty or energy justice. I didn't really know much about it until I actually researched for that panel. I've heard Gideon talk about it, and I mean, it was just, you sit there and you go,
I know. You just want to, like, it makes you wonder why the rest of the world, like, or not the rest of the world, the rest of the US that are, I would say climate doers, like, how do they not know this? I don't know. Or why do you not care? Why do you not care about the other countries who are still burning wood to be able to have a cooked meal in their house, by the way, which is terrible for your health? So it's wild. I don't know the answer, but.
Well, and when you started and you said, for us here, we flip a switch and the light comes on, and we talk about it all the time, how the majority of Americans flip that switch, but actually have no idea where their energy is actually coming from.
Right.
And what goes into it. They just turn it on, plug a phone in, go about their day.
Yeah.
They have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could remember the details of this, but I was on the phone the other night with my coworker, James Collins, and he has studied economic and monetary history. Like, it is incredible. He has a wealth of knowledge. But we were talking about, how did wokeism start? right? And to me, that's a really relatively new term,
Mhm.
but it's actually an old concept that apparently started like decades ago, where economics teachers or professors were basically incentivized to go join universities. And I guess their salaries were paid by like these people outside of the university, or some sort of an agreement where they would basically go in and teach this specific kind of economics, right? And it's like this idea of, inflation is okay. I mean, all of the things that have transpired in education have helped, I think, move these terrible narratives forward.
It makes you really not trust any education. Like, how do you know that you can trust what you're learning, even in like elementary schools right now? How can you trust those history books that's the full history of what happened? It's not.
No, it's not.
It's so crazy how many things we were brainwashed with that we thought was true, and it's just completely wrong. And yeah, how do we trust our kids in that education system? I don't know. I'm kind of glad I'm out of that, although I know it's not new,
Right.
but my kids are in it. Wish me luck. Just kidding.
Just take them out as much as you can.
I have the homeschool.
Did you?
Yeah. I miss it, but I also really enjoy working, and I finally had a talk with my ego, and I can't do both, no matter how much I preach that I could do both.
Yeah. No, it's hard to do everything, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I have a question kind of as we wrap up. So I feel like we talked about it a lot today, and you are so knowledgeable. Where could people like us, people who may be new to the space, just want to get more info, high level, deep dive, especially on this energy poverty front, what are some good resources, websites, people to follow that we can help push out? Other than you, of course.
No, there are so many great folks. Pay attention, go back and look at the Empower conference and look at the speakers, look at the panels and look at the speakers. That's where I would generate my list from.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure y'all have got that out on World Wide Web.
Yeah, I love that. I think what we can do too is in the show notes, we can, link all of this.
Yeah.
Is Twitter your place where you kind of like, that's where you go to learn?
I do. I tell people all the time, like, I'll ask people outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem, are you on Twitter? And they'll say, oh, no, I hate it. I hate the whatever. And I've probably gone from that side to I'm on Twitter all the time, because when you curate a list of folks to follow, and I don't mean curate like make it limited, but you will learn an incredible amount from folks that are out there writing, doing work. I didn't even know about there's an analyst at River Financial who I just started following this week. I mean, his research that he's been doing for a few years has been floating around, and I just found it. Now I'm like, finding all of his written work, reading it. I mean, it's really just exposing yourself to the folks that are producing good content, right? Not getting trapped in the echo chamber of Bitcoin, which is easy to do. But exploring the energy connection to Bitcoin, I think, is really the most interesting, because you can approach it from the human rights aspect,
right?
The health aspect, this is good for the grid, this is good for energy development globally,
right? I mean, it goes back to, oh my gosh, what is the project Marshall Long is on?
Gridless
South. Yes. That, I love that.
I love Marshall Long.
Oh, me too. We need to get him on here too.
You need to get him on here.
Yeah. We I had after Empower, I sat next to him at dinner, and we had a conversation, because after last Empower, I'm like, let's make content together. Let's do something. And so we were messaging on Twitter, and in my mind, I was like, he ghosted me. Like we just stopped talking. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you ghosted me. And he's like, no, you pulled a, like, I'm too busy on me. So I was like, forget it. I didn't do that. And then I went into my messages, and sure enough, I canceled on him twice. I was like, I feel so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry. So we need to get him in here. He's a good time. He's fun.
He is fun.
This is getting me excited for Empower. I know we have Fuse first, but I'm like,
Empower's my favorite.
I know.
I love the people. All the people in the Bitcoin space are just phenomenal people, one, but two, have really good values that align with my own of just freedom and like it's
Okay, so can I just chime in? I know.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
So somebody asked me yesterday, how do I relate the message of Bitcoin to people? Like, what's the strategy of telling people about Bitcoin? And my answer is establishing a value alignment between what you can see that they value and what the values of Bitcoin are. So I'll give you an example. I was at a meeting, sitting around a conference room with a family office, and I didn't know much about them, but I knew they were in the energy business, and I knew that they have some property out west in the Rocky Mountains, and I knew that they love to hunt and fish. And the patriarch of the family was at the meeting, and I hadn't said anything, which is surprising. And he looked at me and said, I want to know what you think. And I said, well, can I ask you a question? Do you own Bitcoin? And he said, you tell me. And I said, all right, well, here's what I know about you. You've been in the energy business your whole life. You love the Rocky Mountains. You love to hunt and fish. You love to be outdoors and be with your family more than anything else. And if you align with those values, you align with liberty, freedom, and private property. And if you align with liberty, freedom, and private property, you align with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And he started laughing, and I said, so do you own Bitcoin? What do you think he said?
He said yes.
He said yes.
I love that. So it's funny because you think people there's this narrative that, like, with Bitcoin, it's like, if you are someone from West Texas. So this example is about my father-in-law. He's, he worked in the oil field his whole life. He isn't very technical when it comes to, like, technology, computer, whatever.
Here, by the way.
He reached out to Colin, and he's like, how do I invest in Bitcoin? And they now live on a ranch. Like, he's your total just West Texas freedom, owns land. So it's so funny that you say that because they now own Bitcoin too.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's easy. I mean, right. It's the right answer.
Yeah.
And for folks that want, maybe you're watching this for the first time and you're thinking, okay, how do I even buy Bitcoin? When I started, I was like downloading the Binance website and like looking at it and going, I'm not transferring funds to China or wherever this was. Go to a Bitcoin only exchange and buy Bitcoin. And there's Cash App, which is not my favorite. I've never bought on Cash App, but people seem to love it. It's Bitcoin only, and I think it's really, really easy.
Easy access. People usually have it downloaded already.
Right.
Yeah.
River Financial. Again, I think the mothership is buying and holding your private keys, and that would be Unchained Capital. They can help you do that. It's not as scary as it seems. I'm not technical. I do know how to turn my computer on, but you can hold your own private keys, right? So your private keys in Bitcoin are the asset,
right?
Having the 12 words, which is like the less than the Lord's Prayer, right? Like, it's 12 words is less than a lot that you've already memorized.
Yeah.
You should hold your own private keys. That is the absolute gold standard holding Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter.
We'll tag you and everything.
If you want to work in Bitcoin, if you want more information, if I can introduce you to folks, if you just want to hop on a 15-minute call, I'm always willing to do that. Reach out.
Awesome.
Amazing. Love it. All right.
Cool. Coming up, we have Energy Tech Night in Oklahoma City on August 10th. Then after that, we are full force into Fuse, which will be our Energy Tech big conference at the end of October at 713 Music Hall here in Houston.
Oh, quick plug for Collide.
Yes.
We just launched open beta of
Yeah.
Collide.
So exciting.
I know. It's a professional network for energy professionals. So get on there and start learning. Hopefully it can be a good resource for learning about Bitcoin mining.
Yes,
Bitcoin as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Lisa, you're on.
Yes.
Yay.
Love Collide. I was like one of the first people in your beta
Yeah.
test.
Yeah. Love it.
Basically, whatever y'all do, I'm doing. Okay.
We love that.
You know.
Thanks again for coming up.
Thanks for having me.
Come back anytime.
I will. Thanks.
Right.
Bye.